Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Red, White, and Rude, where culture and politics collide with zero apologies. I am your host, William Del Pilar, a conservative Latino. And tonight, Diddy sentencing and a deeper raw of domestic violence. Then it's Musk versus Netflix and the battle over indoctrination. Then we'll hit Amazon's demolition of James Bond's masculinity and James Gunn's swipe at Christianity and the fans who built his career. And then we'll close with EA's progressive employees panicking as Saudi Arabia takes control. Plus, the Indiana Jones send off that turned Harrison Ford's legacy into a box office massacre. Make sure you give this podcast a thumbs up as you watch. And please bookmark grumblingsmedia.com where you can find my other podcasts. You can find some of our swag and content. And you can also follow us on YouTube, Rumble, Apple, Spotify, and Pandora under the handle Grumblings Media. And with that out of the way, let's get rude. So Diddy sentenced to 50 months in prison for prostitution convictions. So Sean Diddy Combs received a 50-month, 4 years, 2 months prison sentence. And this was after he was convicted of transporting individuals across state lines for prostitution. The guilt was never in doubt. What they were going after that failed were the RICO charges, and that's another tale. And the government is proving itself to be ineffective at many of these RICO attempts. But he was found guilty on these other charges. And federal judge Arun Subramanian imposed a 50-month sentence, emphasizing deterrence against future crimes involving violence, prostitution, and drugs. But the real kicker, I think, was his noting that Combs had an apparent lack of full remorse. In other words, Combs didn't care about what he did, and he had no remorse in doing it. That's what the judge was really getting at. So after his 50 months in prison, he will also have 5 years of supervised release and a $500,000 fine. Now, $500,000 fine for Diddy is equivalent of me paying somebody $1, literally. But again, he was found not guilty of sex trafficking and racketeering. I just think, I just wonder about, they call it a conspiracy theory or not, but, Comey's daughter, I think, led this debacle. It's a lot of these United States attorney offices are really corrupt in their progressivism, with a lot of appointees who aren't really truly qualified to try cases. And some will say that she's an adequate individual to try this, but obviously she failed at the main charges and was lucky to get what she got. Why? Because it was clearly guilty of what he did, but what really got the conviction was that video we all saw. And it had nothing to do, I think, with the prosecution as much as that video itself condemned him. And we're talking about the one where he was kicking the girl at the hotel, caught on the hotel cams. And to top it off, the security at the hotel were bought off. The guy who actually reported it, he took a copy home because he didn't think, he knew something fishy is going to happen here. So God bless that guy. Anyway, let's get back to this. During the sentencing, Diddy apologized to victims, including Cassie Ventura, the woman in the video we saw getting kicked around. And he admitted his actions were sick and said he was humbled and broken to his core. No, he wasn't. If you saw that letter of complaint, and obviously exaggerating some of the claims, because if they were true, it would have blown up and made the news big time, and it did not. He showed no remorse. He didn't like his treatment. He didn't like being treated like a prisoner. He had no remorse. He was not humbled, and he was not broken to his core. That's my opinion. Now, his legal team plans to appeal, arguing the judge overstepped by referencing coercion, despite the jury rejecting those charges. I think that's not going to go anywhere, but that they're doing their due diligence, and he's paying them a lot of money. Part of the swag, the Gridiron or the Grumblings Media logo there on the cup. That's a big 15-ouncer. All right. Anyway, prosecutors sought an 11-year term, and they cited Combs' qualified remorse and hubris, which I disagree. But they were talking about in booking his post-trial speaking engagements. I'm sorry. I agree with him. They cited Combs' qualified remorse and hubris in booking post-trial speaking engagements. So, in essence, I agree with the prosecution. They're saying he has no remorse. He's showing no hubris. He just booked a post-trial speaking engagement because he expects you, judge, to go slap on the wrist. Now, the defense requested 14 months, which is pretty much what he served so far, and using that as time served. And then they play the race card, portraying him as a Black community inspiration and social justice advocate. That's a mixed bag. I mean, to any American, you can aspire to do what he did, but on the flip side, he's also done a lot of damage to the Black community. The same community he said he was there to help, he actually abused. Now, the ex-girlfriend, Cassandra Cassie Ventura, she detailed these decades-long physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, including the coerced freak-offs. They filmed sexual marathons with hired men, and she was forced to relocate her family. She feared retribution upon Combs' potential release, and there's some data to back that up in terms of some evidence that was given during the trial. In the sense where you can see why she would fear that. Now, I have another podcast called Fired Up Conservative Talk where we talk national issues, and I briefly got their comments on that. And I think off camera, the individual, the wonderful, beautiful Annette Ross, she was like, well, the Texas showed that she agreed with this. She was in on it. And I told her, you need to speak to domestic abuse victims in terms of how they feel, because I used to believe that too. And I do to a degree. At the end of the day, you have to take that responsibility. But there are legitimate reasons as to why they don't, that have been proven with studies over and over and over, patterns they've seen in domestic abuse victims. One is the fear of retaliation. Abusers often threaten violence if the victim tries to leave. You leave, I will kill you. I will hurt you. I will do everything I can to make your life miserable. So that happened in one case about 30 years ago. I saw a 60 Minutes piece, my wife and I. And this woman had this restraining order. The husband broke it. They went to court. The judge, who was going through his own divorce, that's why it was on 60 Minutes, kind of aligned with the guy. Didn't put him in jail. Didn't do anything to him. Let him go. 2 weeks later, the woman was no longer among the living. When they asked the judge what he thought about it, if he had any remorse, no. That's what you call a sick individual. That's what you call an abuser of power. That's what you call somebody who enables domestic abusers, was that judge. So there's that fear of retaliation. And there's one example out of probably millions since the annals of time. Then there's a psychological manipulation. Victims are gaslit into believing their abuse is their fault or that they deserve it. Then there's financial control, which is what Diddy had here. Abusers may control access to money, housing, or essentials, and that makes escape difficult. Then the isolation. Victims are often cut off from friends, family, and support systems. There's trauma bonding as well. Cycles of abuse and affection create emotional dependency. The public image pressure. High-profile abusers like Diddy, they use famed lawyers and PR to silence victims. Who's going to believe you? I'm Diddy. Then now they will. And now he's going to pay an arm and a leg. But then there's also shame and stigma. The victims fear judgment, disbelief, or being blamed. And that's what Cassie got by some individuals. Well, she chose to stick around. They're blaming her. Then there's illegal intimidation. Abusers weaponize lawsuits, NDAs, and threats to suppress truth. This is a power game. We've all been told rape is not about the sexual act. It's about the power that the individual has over the other individual. Children are dependents. Victims stay to protect kids or avoid custody battles. And then there's always the hope for change. Many believe the abuser will improve or that the abuse was a one-time event. The problem here is they weren't able to get this across for the jury to fully understand it. And I think it was a bad job done by the prosecution. But that is one reason why Cassie didn't. Those are many reasons, and likely more than one of those in there is why Cassie didn't lead, to those who sit there and state that, well, she could have left. It's a tough situation. Cops have told me, William, we get a phone call After a while, we stop going because we check the address. We know what it is. The couple's fighting. As soon as we get there, we try to haul off the spouse, usually the 99.9% the male. Then the woman turns on us, starts attacking us. So we let him take it out of one another. Then we'll go there so we don't risk our lives. It's sad that I say that, but that's how the system works. It's a broken system. And women have to be taught they can leave. They can stand up for themselves. Love is not a punch in the face. And our society no longer does that. Does not teach, if it ever did. But you can teach women, I think, hey, it's okay to leave. It's okay to walk away, to have the support system. This is why J.K. Rowling is so anti men thinking they're women, because they get allowed into rape centers and things like that, or prisons, and they do what males do, bad males do. So Combs' sentencing underscores the need for what I call equal accountability under the law. There's no exceptions for fame or fortune. So I was glad to see him sentenced properly because he was found guilty. But the truth of the matter is, too often elite figures in entertainment dodge consequences until the evidence becomes undeniable. In this case, it was that video. His arrogance post-arrest, and then booking speaking gigs days after his hearing, it showed the judge was justified in giving him the 50 months. But his appeal, he's appealing. It proves he's still playing games. He's still trying to dodge real consequences. In his defense with this, I mean, we would all do the same. But there's just something about it, But regardless of how long he serves, he's set to lose hundreds of millions in legal fees and victim payouts. There's a whole swath of people lining up to sue him. And not every court case is going to be in a favorable setting. So one way or another, justice is catching up to P. Diddy. Let's move on. Elon Musk ignites Netflix boycott over children's show with gender themes. So Elon Musk is spearheading a mass cancellation of Netflix subscriptions in response to an animated kids show accused of promoting gender ideology to younger audiences. The show's called Dead End Paranormal Park. It was created by Hamish Steele. It premiered in 2022. It ran for 2 seasons and was canceled by Netflix in early 2023. So it's an older show that's still in your library of shows. It remains available with a TV Y7 rating, featuring the transgender lead character named Barney. And it's in a haunted theme park setting. Now, for those of you wondering, a TV Y7 means the program is suitable for children under 7 and older. And no, it's not. Not if it has those themes, it's not. But that's the indoctrination. But regardless, the TV Y7 states, again, it's suitable for children age 7 or older, but it may contain mild fantasy, violence, or comedic peril that's not appropriate for younger kids. 7 is too young for that, for any of that. Now, resurfaced clips from the show, they went viral on social media, amassing millions of views. And then that's what sparked the accusations that Netflix is pushing gender ideology and pride-centric content to kids as young as 7. And I disagree with that. That's a parent's job. I have a belief in God, but to the family, that's your job to teach your kid. If you want to sit there and teach them in that, that's fine. But believing in God and growing up Catholic does not mean you're going to be lopping off genitals. That is non-reversible. So to me, there's a big difference as well in what you choose to teach your kid. So what was Musk's role? Well, Musk amplified the backlash last week by reposting a cancellation call, urging users to, quote, cancel Netflix for the health of your kids, unquote. He lost a child to transgenderism. So he's not a dog without that doesn't have a fight in this. He does. And when I say lost, I don't know if the child has passed, but he no longer has a relationship with that child. Now, he confirmed his own subscription cancellation, and that led to a flood of similar announcements from followers. Look, I have Netflix. I'm not going to cancel it. We're 2 adults here. Eventually, we're going to cancel Law TV, I think, in the next couple of years. But for now, no. But I condemn Netflix for doing this. And their stock dipped 2% on the same day amid the controversy. Now, why aren't I canceling them? I have 2, Prime and Netflix, that I've had for years. And T-Mobile pays for Netflix. I get Prime, Amazon Prime, because I have the yearly annual subscription, so I don't have to pay shipping. So technically, I had Netflix, but I don't pay for it. So Netflix's stock again dipped 2% on the same day amid the controversy. But the show's voice actor, Zach Barak, defended it as a life-saving representation that could have helped him as a child. I completely disagree. I think he's just making it up. I really do. And then the creator, Steele, he's faced separate backlash over alleged mocking comments about conservative activist Charlie Kirk. He's showing who he is. He wants to shove his belief on your kids, on your children, and he doesn't care about conservatism, and he applauds Charlie Kirk's passing. So look, to me, Netflix's injection of gender ideology into children's programming, it's a blatant overreach. It's a media-driven indoctrination program that targets young minds. They're actively undermining parental authority, and they're erasing traditional values in favor of radical progressive agendas. Let's call it what it is. This is an ideological group that is intent on bypassing parents entirely and funneling their belief system, their ideological beliefs straight to kids. Boycotts are rising, but here's the issue, people. Unlike Disney, Netflix has no wholesome brand to protect. Let me repeat. Netflix has no wholesome brand to protect. Children's content, that's a side hustle. It's not their core business. They don't care. And don't forget, 98% of political donations from Netflix, they go to Democrats. Their CEO is steep, and he's steep in progressive dogma. It reeks. They cheer every win against conservatives while cashing our checks. That's Netflix. Never forget. You have to weigh the cost. If I had kids, I'd cancel it. I don't. So I can sit there and pick and choose what I want. And again, I don't pay for it. T-Mobile pays for it. And yes, I had the lowest tier. There's a few shows. I'm a big Resident Evil fan. I can't watch the latest computer animated one. It's been out for maybe a year now. I can't watch the latest when it came out a year, also Ghostbusters. So yeah, you live and learn, but I'm not going to pay upwards to get it. I get Netflix and Apple TV, which is another one. Same thing, but those are paid for by another service. And the other reason I keep them too is when we have company, friends staying over. Like the kids have something to watch, and not small kids, but now they're teenagers going into young adulthood. All right, Amazon deletes guns from or firearms from every single James Bond film poster. So look, Amazon's removed weapons from promotional posters of all James Bond films during the franchise's relaunch on Prime Video. It just blows my mind, because you can see it where it's like this, or like this, or or like this, or something like this, and now it's just they digitally took them out. So once again, Amazon Prime, they're relaunching the entire James Bond film catalog, and it's drawn attention because of the alterations in the promotional graphics. What they did is they created a thumbnail graphic for each Bond film, but they edited out the firearms from the actors' hands, resulting in odd poses or cropped images like in the Spectre one. Now, original photos obviously show the actors holding semi-automatic pistols or other guns. Again, digitally deleted from the newer versions. Now, the edits were made quietly. No public statement from Amazon or MGM Studios. To me, this reflects corporate optics. They're avoiding imagery that they say could be promoting guns, especially in global markets. No, it's a damn movie. It's a character. And yes, guns are part of this world. And what y'all don't like to hear is more good people with guns have saved people than bad people with guns have killed people in terms of mass shootings. They never love to talk about stats. They talk about the good guy who had a gun. And then they always play it down. Now there's an upcoming Bond film directed by Denis Villeneuve. I think he's did the Dune movies. I that's the one thing too. I'm a little bit older, and I grew up with comics. I was big time. I helped these two individuals, rest in peace, Hoyt and John, start a very successful comic book shop in Fayetteville, North Carolina. One of the few times I'm angry at my dad. But I was into comics heavily. And I remember in the 70s saying, man, when the technology gets here, the Star Wars had come out, you're going to see all these superhero movies. And I was right. And you'd think I'd want to see all this stuff, but no, they're so woke. They're so into moving the progressive ideology. It to me, I just don't even bother now. I didn't never even saw of the final Avengers movie. The thought of Mark Ruffalo watching and supporting him, I just can't stomach it. Anyway, so the upcoming Bond film is directed by Villeneuve with a screenplay by Stephen Knight, and Amazon acquired the James Bond MGM for $8.45 billion, and they're now a key player in all of this. So who knows what the future Bond films will bring? Could be Bond with a carrot. Bond beat it. Yeah. I don't know. It's just garbage now. It's just garbage. This isn't just censorship of old posters. It's a corporate rebranding of Bond. Look, they're gutting core themes like self-defense, espionage, realism, and masculinity. Sean Connery and Daniel Craig and Timothy Dalton and George Lazenby, they were a man's man. George Lazenby was a real-life special forces guy. You know, they're taking that away. I mean, Roger Moore was my favorite, but that's because I grew up with him. But he did not have the masculinity. He had the elitist espionage spy. And Pierce Brosnan to me was a joke. Good actor. I've enjoyed him other stuff, but I thought Daniel Craig brought life back to it, but he was an embarrassment in the final movie. Again, taking away the masculinity of the character. Look, Amazon has deep ties into progressive politics and global influences. So this is more than just a one-off. It's a franchise-wide ideological shift. And I believe future films will reflect that sanitized worldview. The last Bond film barely broke even, people. Not just because of bloated costs, but because they're bleeding their core audience. Masculine men and a legacy fan base that's aging out. The people who grew up with Dr. No and all those, they're in their 90s. If they're still around. Then the next generation, which is mine, they're between 70 and 40 now. It's a different genre or different segment of society out there that doesn't care. I mean, there is always masculinity, but you can't make a movie that's going to cost you 600, 700 million once you get marketing costs and all that put in there and expect to make that back. This movie did not. The truth is, Bond isn't what it used to be. Daniel Craig revived the role only to exit in a disgraceful anti-Bond finale. A woke mess that betrayed everything the character stood for. And now with Gunn's from the posters, that woke mess marches on. Let's talk about James Gunn's Peacemaker episode. If y'all even know what Peacemaker is, it's a DC hero. It's done on HBO Max. The ratings are not what they thought they would be, but they're still keeping it going because now it's under James Gunn's tutelage, and they think he can save it. He can't. And the actor, boy, that's one ugly actor. Oh man, it's like as he's aged, his mouth just gotten longer and longer. John Cena, not the handsomest looking guy. It's kind of like a John. Seems like a fun-loving guy, but man. He's the actor who apologized to China in China in Mandarin. Screw y'all who sit there and say, "Oh, what you just did was racist." I've got my whole one side of my Panamanian family as Asian in it, so F off. So, James Gunn's Peacemaker Season 2 episode depicts Christianity as favored in a fascist Nazi alternate universe, equating it with authoritarianism and drawing criticisms for offending religious viewers. It's always Christianity that's attacked. Always Christian. Nobody else. Well, I guess Jews too. Israel too. But regardless, a recent episode of Peacemaker was written and directed by Gunn. And it features a controversial joke linking Christianity to fascism in an alternate Earth X world. So in the scene, the characters, one's Adebayo and Judo Master, they're talking about this Earth X as a global Nazi regime persecuting minorities, gays, Buddhists, and others. But yet when Adebayo exclaims, "Jesus, what about Jesus Christ?" The Judo Master replies, "Oh, him they love." You get it? They hate everybody else, but they love Jesus. These white supremacists love Jesus. You see the tie-in? That's what you call subtle. That's what you call subtle brainwashing. And then he notes that Earth X is not as different from our own world as we wish it was. You see what I'm trying to say here? Now, this aired right after his GQ interviews where he labeled fans criticizing his work as racist. Now, the reason that's important is it fits a broader Hollywood pattern. He's associating traditional religious views with bigotry and authoritarianism. And at the same time, he's dismissing the backlash towards that as racism. It's a trope used a couple years ago, and it failed miserably upon its use. I think Gunn's days are numbered. You know, I mean, his Peacemaker episode on HBO Max, first of all, it exemplifies Hollywood's hostility towards Christianity. It's lazily equating faith with fascism. It ignores Christianity's historical opposition to totalitarianism. He's choosing inflammatory satire over honest storytelling. And that's a tactic designed to indoctrinate, not inform. Again, they don't mock any other religion this way. Only Christianity gets this treatment. And let's not forget, James Gunn was hot fired from Disney for grotesque jokes about child abuse on X. He was reinstated, but did nothing to defend conservatives like Gina Carano, who were railroaded for far less. It was the woke industry that brought him back. They had to go, hey, we're going to have to pretend to fire you, and then we'll bring you back. Look, he's a progressive. Gunn is a progressive ideologue, drunk on power, and his fall will come faster than he thinks. Look, Superman Legacy didn't bomb, but it wasn't the blockbuster they needed to relaunch the DC universe. Peacemaker, the ratings speak for themselves. I want to say like a couple 100,000 people have been watching that show. And for myself, I'm boycotting Gunn's work. All he pushes is progressive intolerance, mass as inclusion. Superman, haven't seen it. Peacemaker, won't see it. I do a lot of reading. I talk to individuals who are fans. I got kids who love the show, or I know kids who love the show. That's how I do my research. And then I asked them about it. The one kid, I was like, well, as a Christian, what do you think of that? And then he thought about it and goes, well, I guess that's wrong, huh? And he just said, shook my head. Yep, I would think so. EA employees panic amid the Saudi-backed takeover. So EA employees, they're distressed over the company's $55 billion sale to a Saudi-backed consortium. They're citing value clashes and fears of worsening conditions, including layoffs. So here's what happened. EA was acquired in a $55 billion deal by a Saudi-led group, and employee concerns erupted. It was sold to Saudi Arabia's PIF. I forget what it stands for. I may have it in my notes later. But the PIF, Silver Lake, and Affinity Partners. Now EA is going private, and they're assuming $20 billion in debt. Now CEO Andrew Wilson is staying on with bonuses and more control and a big fatter paycheck. So what is going into debt? EA assumed the $20 billion in debt. That means EA now carries that portion of the loan used to buy itself, not the investors. I looked into this. It's a nightmare. The people who get screwed is the company itself, EA, not the investors, not the people running the company, because they get fat golden parachutes to walk away. That's part of that debt and the buyouts. And then all this extra debt gets put on the company. So if EA fails, investors walk away clean. EA and its employees eat the loss. Executives and major shareholders cash out big millions in payouts, equity, and retention deals. The public shareholders get a one-time premium but lose future upside. Now, critics call it self-serving, which I agree. Management escapes scrutiny and loads the company with risk. This happened with Ubisoft as well. Now, supporters say it frees EA from Wall Street pressure to focus on long-term growth, and that is true. They don't have to answer to shareholders now. They can take their time. Now, PIF now owns stakes. PIF now owns stakes in EA, the PGA Tour, and other Western cultural assets. This is Saudi Arabia. PIF is partially owned by the Saudi Arabian government. This isn't just investment. It's a strategic capture. Look, the bottom line is EA becomes a debt mule. And the winners are the executives and foreign investors. So PIF loses nothing in this. Now, some of their employee reactions, The staff slammed the deal as hypocritical, clashing with EA's public support for diversity, inclusion, and LGBTQ plus rights. Saudi Arabia's record on gender segregation and criminalization of same-sex relationship, that sparked some internal backlash. Now, some of the employees fear EA's progressive branding will be diluted or weaponized for PR while core values erode. Now, concerns are rising over the post-deal layoffs, especially after recent workforce cuts. And they say morale is already low. Yeah, more cuts are coming. Now, again, one insider called it a sellout, accusing leadership of chasing personal windfalls while leaving staff exposed. That's just how life works. These same staff will leave your ass and go to another job. That's human nature. That's how the real world works. Now, many predict worsening conditions post-closure, tighter budgets, less transparency, and ideological tension. What's going to happen here is that EA is going to lose all the DEI, the wokeness, because that is what has brought the whole company down. And they're going to implement, we want a game that everybody can play, that everybody likes. We don't care about your progressive beliefs. We're not here to support it. You don't like it, go somewhere else. That's in essence what's going to happen, and EA will clean house over the next 90 days to the next 5 years. Saudi influence will and will curb EA's obsession with DEI gimmicks like pronoun menus in games. They're going to shift and refocus the company on core entertainment and profitability, not progressive agendas. This aligns with growing backlash against corporate overreach into social engineering. So progressive or woke employees don't get it. EA went woke, lost its edge, and made itself right for takeover. Again, I was taught if you don't like how a company runs, start your own. I did. Too many progressive activists, woke activists, Democrat activists, whatever, liberal activists, whatever you want to call it. They want to hijack companies and dictate policy under the banner of compassion. In reality, it's ideological coercion. And how do we respond? We close our wallets. We don't buy the games. And again, that's what put EA into this position to be taken over. Progressives never learn. This will keep happening as China and Saudi Arabia scoop up stagnating Western brands. All right, let's close it out with some good news. I love good news when corporations fail after trying to shove progressive ideology down our throats. So Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny came out 3-4 years ago now, I guess maybe a few years ago now. The real numbers have come out, and it surpassed $400 million in costs, one of Disney's biggest flops. So Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny racked up over $400 million in production costs. That's before marketing. Add another 150, 200 million to that because it was a high-end Big Tent movie. You're looking at over 500 or over 500 million in total costs. It only grossed 384 million worldwide. They're saying at least 130 million in losses. I'm saying up to 200 million. Okay, it was released in 2023. It was a send-off for Harrison Ford's iconic role. It bombed again at the box office. It became a stain not just on Ford's legacy, but on the franchise itself. Now, here's the problem. It co-starred Phoebe Waller-Bridge. The reviews were lukewarm, fans were divided, and younger audiences didn't show up. It was a legacy tarnished. They weren't able to connect the old with the middle to the new, to create a transition where they could keep the franchise going. They shoved woke. They shoved a matriarchal foundation to move it forward. We didn't want that. That's not what Indie's about. Why do I say that? Well, the film felt more like a setup for a future female-led indie reboot. Indie's son was killed off, and Waller-Bridge was positioned as his ideological heir. She even shamed him on screen. They reduced Ford's character to a sidekick in his own farewell. And maybe they had to because of his age and the fact he couldn't do things as he could before. But you do it with a strong male in those type of roles. That's in Indie's, like making Indie a female lead or putting the role on a female is like making Jane the lead in a Tarzan movie. Again, production cost balloon past $400 million. Now they said due to global lockdowns. Okay, I'll buy that. But extensive reshoots, story changes, and heavy CGI investments for de-aging Harrison Ford. Now the film received a $67 million tax rebate from the UK government. So this could have been even worse because it filmed there. Now the early estimates were from 295 to about 385. The final figure. We know that's blown out of the water. So if we use the industry standard multiplier formula, which accounts for theaters taking 50% of gross plus marketing and other costs, a film typically needs to gross. Then we break down the formula. You have a multiplier. So a 2.5 times is a multiplier that combines production and marketing budgets to break even. A 2.6 is to begin turning a profit. A 3.0 or more is considered pretty much a bona fide box office smash if they can hit that. So Dial of Destiny total cost for 500 million, 400 million with 100 million. Now, some reports are 150 million marketing. And I read one report it could have been up to 200 million. So the break even required was 1.25 billion. It made 384 million. That's a multiplier of not even 1%, 0.77, far below break even. Now, again, 130 million loss is what they're saying. But when you do all kinds of counting for post-theatrical revenue, streaming, licensing, etc., the net loss is likely in the 200 to 300 million range. So that 130 million figure is probably exclusive to marketing overseas, revenue splits, and back-end deals. So this flop aligns with a pattern at Lucasfilms under Kathleen Kennedy, including losses on Solo, a Star Wars story. I think that's like the only Star Wars franchise that actually literally lose money. Then you had, well, at the time, then you had the 250 million plus canceled series, The Acolyte. Then abandoned projects. Look, this financial disaster, what it does, it highlights Disney's broken strategy under current leadership, especially Kathleen Kennedy. What she did was prioritize high budget reboots that rewrote beloved franchises. The core audience has been alienated, me, and the result is a string of box office failures. Look, you can add Indiana Jones' Dial of Destiny to the revamped numbers from The Little Mermaid. And you have to ask, how has Kathleen Kennedy and Bob Iger kept their jobs? The Marvel Universe has collapsed into mediocrity since the Thanos saga ended. It's been flop after flop. Can Disney survive long term? Yes, but only because the board and shareholders are finally making noise. Disney has an image to protect, but it hasn't for over a decade. Eventually, it will course correct only because investors demand profit, not woke ideological driven madness. That's it, my friends. It's good to be back. We will be going through some changes here at Grumblings Media, so I'm going to be asking you to have some patience with the Red, White, and Rude. So be on the lookout for more news on that, as it may or may not impact this show, but we are going through changes. But before we go, make sure you hit like or thumbs up and share this podcast. Then bookmark grumblingsmedia.com and follow us on YouTube, Rumble, Apple, Spotify, y Pandora under the profile handle Grumblings Media. Finally, don't forget to check out our new swag as we have shirts, cups, and hats at grumblingsmedia.com. Until next time, this is William Del Pilar for the Red, White, and Rude. Stay safe and let me know your thoughts in the comments.
Hey everybody, this is Big John from Grumblings Media, and I just want to say thank you for watching our content. If you want to support our efforts here at Grumblings Media, just smash the subscribe button right here, totally free, or just go ahead and consume more of our great content. Click either one of these two boxes.